Welcome back, everybody, to Pivot Point View. I'm Justin Joseph, along with Becky Pearson. And if you haven't been with us before, or this is your first time tuning in ever, welcome. And I hope that your new year has started well. I'm an athletic trainer. Becky is a physical therapist for people and horses. And we just have a true passion to helping people get out of pain and stay out of pain. We don't believe that people should just go through their day and that's it for them, that they are supposed to live in pain every day, and that's just not good enough for us. So we make it not good enough for everybody else that we help. And so yeah, that's who we are. Today we're going to be talking about return to work. So for returning your horses to and conditioning them, getting them ready for the next season. A lot of times this time of year is a downtime for most people. I know the big winter rodeos are going on, so it's not true for everybody, but this time of year does look a little different for most people, especially our friends up north. And so we're going to tie that into some of the strategies that you may be thinking about making changes for the new year as well. And we're about to get a big winter storm down here in Oklahoma. And it's like snowmageddon every time this happens because no one is really built or nothing is really built or prepared to take this type of snow. We're supposed to get anywhere from 10 to 16 inches, which is like, a light snow in most areas of the United States, but it'll shut this entire area and state down here because, instead of having like big snow plows and salt trucks, not that we don't have those, but we don't have a lot of them. Most of our stuff is like it seems like it's a four wheeler with a plow on it or skid loader or something like that to clear everything off. And most of the strategies of the people of the South is if you wait long enough, it'll melt and go away. So that's what we deal with down here. And so every time it happens, it's a really crazy deal. And honestly, I don't trust people. I trust myself to drive on the roads. I don't trust other people down here, especially. And even if they came from up north, they might have came here because they couldn't drive up there either. Most of the time, it's safer to just stay home when there's a snowstorm in the south. But yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of that. And one of the things I wanted to share was as I was preparing for this snowstorm, and most of the time when this happens, for whatever reason, even though I grew up in Nebraska, I've been around snow, all the things. Every time this happens, I'm in a panic like I don't have what I need to handle this for my animals, for myself, whatever. And then if you stop and think about it, you just got to think about what you do have versus what you don't have. And that strategy just really hit me when I thought of it because that's true in everything in life, everything that we do. And so as I worked through that process, I'm like, all right, I got my tank heaters. I got plenty of hay in the barn. I got wood for my wood stove. I got propane if I need it. So then I start going through this list of what I do have, and I realized that I was way more prepared than I thought I was. And so, just a little pearl of wisdom or whatever you want to call it, if you take that approach to whatever it is you're doing, you'll realize that you have a lot more going for you than what you think you do. And you're ready to start, even though you may not think you have everything you need to start. If you start looking at what you do have, you're gonna have a lot of tools to get going on what you're ready to do. So that's it on that. Becky, let's talk about preconditioning for our horses. So what are some of the strategies and things that we need to pay attention to whenever we're starting to get our horses out of the pack? Because first of all, this was kind of a big deal at the one of the ladies at the Denver Rodeo. We'll just go ahead since we like controversy on here, apparently. If you listen to our NFR podcast, I mean, that was a big deal when you pull your horse out of the pasture and you're getting them ready to go versus just pulling them and running them. What are some of the things we got to pay attention to there and to make that safe for our horse or in order to go about it the right way? Because the game has changed, right? I mean, we're not in that mode of where we just jump on stuff and go or we just show up to the road. I mean, people work out now. People do all sorts of therapy and preconditioning for their horses. So what are some of the things that we need to think about as we do that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say I did not get involved in any of this drama for Denver Stock Show. So I'm clueless as to what you're talking about. So do you want to enlighten me or
Oh,
yeah.
well,
Yeah. See, I don't know. I guess I missed that.
basically, this professional trail racer, she made a post on Facebook that and I don't know what happened. Something happened to the horse that she was going to run to Denver. Her
Mm.
good horse was on break. She pulled her good horse out of the pasture 4 days ago and pretty much went and I don't remember if she won the rodeo or whatever. She had a really good ride and is making it back to the short round, whatever. And it upset a lot of people for that. I don't know if they took it as she was wearing that as a badge of honor. I don't really know the context. I just know what happened. So, can't really speak to either side there. But that's what happened. She took her horse out of the pasture 4 days before she ran him, apparently, and went and whooped everybody's ass. And then, you know, a lot of people felt that put that horse at risk, and it wasn't worth the risk to do that. So that's kind of where most of the controversy started.
Well, I think first and foremost, we don't know exactly what all went into that. Everybody's opinion on pulled him out of the pasture can be different. If he was just in a stall and hadn't been able to move around much or whatever, or in a really small lot and really deconditioned, obviously she felt it was her only option. And I don't know that I would wear that as a badge of honor, but it isn't the ideal situation, and I can guarantee you she probably wouldn't have done that had she had a choice. So, right now it is a very challenging time of year for a lot of us when we get in the northern part of the United States to keep them horses in good condition. And ideally, yeah, if we want to have the best season possible, we want to do the preparation beforehand. And so, for us right now, we've thankfully here in West Central Nebraska, we've had a very mild winter, and doing things 2 to 3 days a week has worked pretty darn well for us. Thankfully, we haven't had a lot of moisture, so the ground isn't hard and frozen. But that isn't always the case for us. I have came up with a program. I've used it now for years. It's called 8 to Great, and we have it available in an online package that you can purchase. And basically, it really spreads your conditioning out over 8 weeks. And so if you want to make sure that your horse is in good condition, I would definitely recommend going slow. I don't necessarily recommend just pulling out of the pasture and going and running at Denver. But again, we don't know her situation. We don't know everything, what that horse's fitness level was, how long it had been turned out, all that stuff. There's been times in our career with me and the kids, if you give your horse a week off, is that going to hurt you? And I know my kids will ask me that. Well, mom, I haven't rode this week. I don't think I should go enter this race or whatever. And honestly, I really don't think you're putting your horse at injury if it's a real short time that you have had them off. But again, do they have old injuries that you need to take into consideration? When they were turned out, were they healthy at that point, or too, like horses can be idiots out in the pasture. I love them to have turnout. I love that. But sometimes some of the worst injuries that we've had in a horse have happened out in the pasture because they're just being stupid. Really, in an ideal world, in a perfect setup, you have a couple months to get them legged up and ready to go. And so, looking at a program like that, 8 to Great, is great, a great way to give you some structure to bringing them back off of a layoff. But then if you have an injury that you've been rehabbing, then that's a different scenario. And so we also have a return to work program that goes into a little more depth than what you'll probably get from your normal vet. As I've looked at or discussed with people what their veterinarians have recommended when the horse has been released to work, they don't give people a ton of guidance. And some people that works great for them. Other people, they want like, how many minutes do I do exactly what, and da 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 da. And so I've laid that out in the return to work program that again is also available online. And it takes you all the way from hand walking, just a few minutes a day, to then, walking with a saddle on, to then riding, walking. And, that can be a very dangerous time because if you have a horse that is coming off a stall rest, like some of these high level barrel horses, rodeo horses, they are full of themselves, and they're like, they've been a caged tiger for, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or months, rehabbing or healing up from this injury. And so it's something to definitely visit with your vet about if you are afraid that either you're gonna get hurt on this horse because it's gonna blow at any little thing, or you're afraid that they're gonna be so fractious minded and blow up and re-injure themselves. And so there's some pharmaceuticals out there that can help get them to chill out a little bit. In my experience, when I had inpatient rehab horses, we did use some herbal supplements. One of them that comes to mind is CEP Gear Down, and that kind of helped chill some horses out a little bit to where we could take that edge off enough, but not have them dangerously doped up per se to be able to, get those initial workouts in place without me getting hurt or them getting hurt. And then sometimes, dang, if they are still just full of themselves, sometimes you got to do what you have to do for survival of you. Them getting hurt is not as bad as you getting hurt, really. So, if you have to step off of them and you have to lunge them around for a little bit of respect. I like to do like some 180s. I don't like to just let them go around circles and circles and circles around me. I like to do a 180, make them turn, go back. It makes them start thinking and getting locked in on you a little bit more. And so there's a lot that goes into it. And if anybody has any specific questions about a horse that they're trying to bring back from injury, I'd be more than happy to jump on a call with them and help them problem solve a little bit more as to what can be helpful for their situation, and what do they have for facilities. I mean, they might not have anything but a gravel road or, whatever. So how do we manage that? So every situation is unique, and we can help you figure out how to manage it.
Yeah, I think that whenever I moved down here and when I was growing up, we turned our horses out in the wintertime and they'd be in a, quarter section of pasture with hills and all the things. And so they're constantly moving, going up and down hills and looking good and feeling good and constantly on the go. And that's a lot different than one being on Staros, even for the fact of or one being just in a run because they're having to pay attention to different types of footing. And that's kind of what we talked about on Sam Flannery's podcast is turning those horses out and how much more mindful they are of where their feet are when they've been turned out in big areas like that. And we're able to survive. Obviously, sometimes bad things happen out there, but for the most part, they become pretty resilient. And I think that we forget how resilient these animals are sometimes. I mean, we have a mare that's on break right now. She's older and we don't run her during the winter time. And she is constantly tearing around up and down her pastures because she feels good or whatever. That's just her. So it's a little bit different. It's not like she's not moving at all. And I think so when you compare your situation to other people's, some of that context gets lost in translation. But yeah, and then the other day I saw a Brazilian return to work program. It just popped up on my Instagram randomly, and that was pretty interesting because they had periods of works like say 5 minutes of long trotting one way, 5 minutes of long trotting the other way, and then like a 5 minute walk, and then they would lope 5 minutes to the left, 5 minute walk, lope 5 minutes to the right, 5 minute or 10 minute cool down, and that was their conditioning for that day. So I thought that was really interesting how they prioritized breaks in between the work and allowed time in between sets,
Mhm.
essentially,
Yeah.
to recover.
Yeah, and in our 8 to Great program, we have it kinda laid out like that, and then we have also, as we get into the later weeks, when you get into, like, week 7 and 8, we also have some sprints built in there. So if you are a timed event person, obviously speed is an issue, and so we have some sprints built in there, but there's definitely times for those horses to recover. And then again, you have to take into consideration what is your horse's mindset. If it is a fire breathing dragon, and if you sprint them at home, like, you are gonna be in trouble, then, maybe that isn't something you need. But if you have a horse that maybe lacks a little bit of speed, a little fire, you are not ever gonna get that speed if you don't train for the speed. So sometimes I think some of these more cowbred horses that maybe aren't as athletic, there's some cowbred horses that are super, super athletic, don't get me wrong, but, you need to train for speed if they are lacking the speed, but it goes along with the being able to control that speed and direction. Our good friend Phil Haugen talks about that a lot. Like, that's the goal of horsemanship. When we are in a timed event, we have to be able to control speed and direction. And so we have to be able to go fast, but we have to be able to control that. So it all is really dependent on your horse and your situation, where you're at when you're conditioning, but it is a factor to think about when you are looking at your conditioning program.
And you got to remember that changing speed requires different musculature in order to perform that task. Like eccentric musculature when you're slowing down. And so you have to train those different muscle fibers. But you're right, 100%. If you're just gonna low all the time, that doesn't really like that's not functional, right? So we don't train 100-yard dash people by running them 3 miles every day. I guess that would be an example. So, yeah, definitely a good thing to do. Another thing you touched on coming off of injuries. So one of our main programs that we have on the app is the return to work for the stifle. And so, if your horse has a stifle issue, and even if it hasn't had a stifle issue, it is just a great overall injury prevention program. And so that's kind of been my goal is on off days where I'm not in the arena, whatever, setting up different scenarios or working different things into my warm up and cool down that focus on that prevention because we're going to be doing it anyway. So we
Mhm.
might as well be working some injury prevention into that and increasing the longevity of our horses. For example, my good horse, Party Girl, she is 16 this year and still kind of all I have. So, I mean, it's not like I don't have backup horses or whatever, but I don't like she is the one
Mhm.
that I have that I know I can go win on and I can't not have her. And so, that also like where I go with her is a factor. How I warm her up, the things that I do with her pre and post run, what I'm feeding her, all that stuff goes into play because I've got to have her. She's the one I've got to have. She cannot be out. And not that I don't work in specific rest periods throughout the year, but I've got to have her. So that is a good program. Our cycle program is a great way
Mhm.
to have an idea on the things to build in their bodies to prevent injury for these events. And I got some younger horses coming up and that'll take pressure off of her eventually as well. So I'm excited about that. And that plays into my big goal for the year. So it's fun to have something to shoot at.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point. Like, the stifle program, we call it a stifle program, but really it's a great range of motion and strengthening program. And so we have also adapted it. This winter, I adapted it to also incorporate some EPM rehab with that as well. And so each EPM case is a little bit different, but in general, they need to have body awareness, they need to be able to balance, they need to be able to be strong. And so this also is lined out to help guide you as you bring your horse back from a case of EPM where they've lost strength, they lost some coordination because the activities that you do in that program are also very similar. The stifle program and the EPM program are very similar, different, little bit of different mechanism of injury or what has set them back, but the main goals are always, I feel, the same. We need to restore range of motion. If they've lost range of motion, we need to restore not only passive range of motion, but then active range of motion. And then we need to restore strength and coordination. Those are my main goals whenever I set up a program for a horse. that it needs to follow those guidelines, and that's what I use with people too. I mean, if a person doesn't have a range of motion in their shoulder, you know, if the joint just doesn't move they're not gonna be able to move their arm there. So first we've gotta get that passive range of motion in that shoulder, and then we've gotta get it to where they can move that shoulder, and then we can move into the strengthening phase of things. And then we get people back to return to sports. That it's the same concept, is just a different animal, really, per se. So, and as we look at off-season stuff, depending on your situation, like you're talking about, there's a huge snowstorm coming, and instead of just sitting in the house and watching Netflix for days on end because it's too icy, use that time for to work on yourself, get yourself going on a good exercise program. If you need help with that, we do that. But then also, like, I was talking to a gal from Minnesota the other day, and she's, kind of in the dumps because she can't get going with her horses. And I said, this is a great time to review old videos and look for commonalities, common things that were going on last season, problems that you had. Maybe your horse wasn't finishing third barrel like it should. Maybe you had a little bit too wide of approach into first barrel all the time. So I think it's a great time to look back and try to reflect when you're not in that heat of the moment of either you're elated because things went awesome or you're depressed because your run didn't go great, when you're reviewing that video shortly thereafter. So I really found the value of this when I was preparing like sale videos for horses. And you go back and you look and it's like, dang, I didn't realize that he kind of always did that, And until you watch video after video in different scenarios, like, this horse in particular that I was looking to put some videos together, I really noticed some things that didn't stand out necessarily just one run at a time. But so this is a great time to review those things and review what you're doing as a rider, slow it down. Where are your hands? What's your butt doing when you're in the turn? Are you sitting in the turns? Or are you getting thrown forward too much? So if the weather doesn't allow for you to be out there, there's still a lot of things that you can do to prepare.
Definitely. And another thing that we talked about before we started recording was you can, like, even if your horse is in a stall and the weather's bad outside and you can't get out to ride him, there are simple stretches and different types of range of motion exercises you can do with your horse to just feel better and increase their range of motion and stretch their muscles. Now, as long as they aren't a stone cold killer and don't try to kill you every time you go in their stall or whatever, like, I'm not trying to say go in there with an outlaw and try to stretch your horse is gonna paw you down, but, I mean, if it's good to spend just they like spending time with you too. I mean, it's good to just spend time with them
Mhm.
and check over their body, see if you feel anything in their muscles or restrictions and gently release that stuff too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. Look what you can do. Um,
Mhm.
like I said before.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely stuff that can be done during those times.
So if you are going out and you're working with your horse and it is, you think, really really cold and you're not sure is it safe to do those things, it's just cold, you have safe footing, all that kind of stuff, obviously you want to take more time warming your horse up, making sure that you're getting those muscles, those tendons, and yourself, getting yourself warmed up through a gradual progression of movement. And then if there's an old injury to consider, like, make sure that you take more time regarding that. Is it an old suspensory? Is it a hock issue? Is it a stifle issue? The back. It seems like that was a common theme for me the last time I went to a barrel race. I had treated a ton of horses that were having back pain. And so, what kinds of things do you need to do to make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself or your horse in those situations? And we pulled up some stats online, and basically anything under 20 degrees Fahrenheit, you need to take more time, more caution, and really keep lightening the load as you get colder. And below freezing, or excuse me, below zero, you definitely need to have some caution. Growing up in Minnesota, I worked for a horse trainer up there, and it It got dang cold in January in Minnesota. We still had horses that needed to be rode, and we didn't have a heated indoor. We had an indoor, but it was not heated. And I remember a lot of times getting off those horses and there's icicles hanging from their nose because, I mean, they're breathing while we're working, but that was pretty brutal to have these, 4-inch icicles hanging from your horse's nose after you got done. And you got to make sure you're cooling them out properly after something like that. Can be done. The feedlot cowboys, they got to be out there in all conditions. I feel for those guys on days like today. Or the ranchers that are calving right now, it's brutal, but it's a way of life that we chose to have. Definitely something that we need to try to do the best we can for taking care of the animals that God's put in our care and trying to be as safe as we can be.
Yeah, what are some things that people can use to just maybe like modality wise that people can use? I mean, I've seen a lot of great things about red light on the back. Using red light and maybe magnets or back on track type stuff that might help on the way
Mhm.
to the barrel race, or right when you get there while you're paying your fees or however you want to use that stuff. And red light's also a great recovery deal too on recovery days. So there are different modalities. What other modalities might you think would be good for that, Becky?
Yeah, our friends from Pro 6, those ladies developed, like a hot pack attachment for the Pro 6, and that's another off-season conditioning tool that I absolutely love. We use it here a couple times a week, when the weather's not great and I don't wanna be out there very long, but I know my horses need to be worked, I put them in the round pen with the Pro 6 on, and I run Old Big around for, 15 minutes with that Pro 6 on, and he's huffing and puffing, and it's been a great, tool to have. So there are some hot packs that you can do, you can contact them. I don't know if it was more of a pilot deal. They sent it to me to get my opinion on it, but it's something that you can reach out to them. And yeah, sometimes just a good old blanket, keeping them warm, that body temperature, getting that, the body temperature up. I love the back on track quick wraps for the legs this time of year, especially if they're stalled. It really helps with the horses that stock up a little bit. That's wonderful. And rider gear this time of year. None of you have tried the Cowgirl Tough insulated jeans. Like, they're a game changer this time of year. They aren't as bulky as coveralls. They are awesome. You put them on. A lot of times you don't even have to have a pair of long underwear under there. You can just wear those, but if you do put some long underwear under or leggings under your insulated jeans, I mean, you can ride in them. There's some great riding winter riding boots out there too, that'll keep you safe, not get you hung up if something happens. I do not have any heated vests or heated socks, the battery operated ones.
I have a heated vest. I love it.
There you
I don't
go.
know why I went so long without it, but the heated vests are nice. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna whatever heated vest company wants to come on here and sponsor, come on. I love them.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many options out there, and I even, you know, Sam, we talked about Sam earlier, I remember back in a few years back when she qualified for the American and she was getting legged up, she wore ski goggles and her wild rag and, heated everything that she could to keep that horse legged up. And so, I mean, there's been a lot of times when I go out to do chores and I have my ski goggles on and my face mask and you cannot see, but dang, I went out this morning because I didn't want to put my stocking cap on and it was cold. So you got to do what you got to do. Keep yourself healthy. Don't get frostbite. And it does make us tougher. When we get cold, dang, it helps that fat burning. It increases that thermogenesis and it stimulates our brown fat in our body, which is the good fat that we want. So just think about that if you get cold, hey, you're stimulating your brown fat and burning calories, right?
Yeah, always an upside.
Yeah,
Always an upside. Yeah, no, but I love what you tell me about your ski goggles. I can just picture you running around out there, sizing your horse for doing your chores like it's the Arctic. It just cracks me up.
it is. And Some people this time of year have either started training for marathons, half marathons. Gal in my exercise class, we have kettlebell class that I go to 2, 3 times a week. She started training for a 5K, and so they're outside running. And the ski goggles, heck, if you need to, like, it sure protects your eyes and your face, and with a face mask. So it helps you if you're doing that 75 hard. We talked about that last year about this time. You have to do 2 workouts a day, and one of them has to be outside. Well, when it's brutal cold like this, how are you gonna protect yourself? And so those are all options to keep you safe while you're out there.
Absolutely. And as we talk about this, the work part, the recovery part is just as important. So don't neglect taking time to help your body recover. Hopefully you're getting good sleep, you're putting the right stuff in your body. I mean, it all goes together for the common good and the big goal at the end. I mean, I know that like with what I want to do at the end of the year, my wife and I have talked about it and we want to go to Arizona. We're tired of talking about it
Mhm.
and so at the end of the year, we're taking 2 weeks off, putting you on notice now. We're going to go to Arizona first, then Vegas the rest of the time.
Nice.
And that's what we're doing, period.
Perfect.
Vegas or bust. So everything that we do now with our horses, how we train ourselves, how we train our horses, how we feed ourselves, how we feed our horses, all of those things go towards that, the financial stuff, everything. It prepares us for that. That's what we're shooting at for us. I know a lot of people do that every year. I'm jealous. But we've talked about it and we're done talking about it. I mean, we're not getting any younger. Our horses aren't getting any younger and we want to go do it. So
Yeah.
putting the world on notice. That's happening 2026. Are you ready? If you want to catch me those 2 weeks, I'll be out west.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, that's my goal as well, to be able to go south next winter. I'm gonna dip my toe in that here in a few weeks. About a month, actually. I'm gonna head down and I'll be at the Art of the Cowgirl. So if anybody listening is gonna be there, look me up. I'll have a booth there, and not gonna take a horse with me. I think for this trip, I just wanna focus on treating horses and riders and see how that goes. And so that'll help me plan for next winter when I wanna go down there for longer stays, and I will have my horses with me next year. Yeah, I mean, sit down, get yourself some goals, and then reverse engineer it. How are you gonna work yourself back? How are you gonna plan for that? And, I had this great conversation the other day with a rancher. I went up into the sandhills, and I actually seen a couple different ranch families, and we were talking about that. Like, they don't calve right now. They don't have registered heifers. That seems like that's the people that are calving right now, are the people that have those registered cattle, and a lot of times they start with their heifers, and these people don't. And I said, really, this is your guys' off season. And so this is your time to get yourselves healthier. And really, our conditioning in our off season is what carries us through our in season with the horses, with the athletes. And, if you're a rancher, like, same goes for you. Like, if you do have a little bit slower time of year, like, this is your time to get your back pain under control. It's your time to get yourself feeling better, because when it comes go time, like, there isn't time for you to take that time for yourself per se, when you're trying to keep those cattle alive, when you're trying to keep those baby horses alive, when you're foaling, when you're, whatever your business is. And so really, this is your time to prepare for yourself, for your animals. Take this seriously and don't put it off, because really, if you don't take time for your health and wellness, you're going to have to take time for illness. And it usually isn't a very convenient time to do that.
Yeah, if you don't take a break, your body will make you take a break. And I've seen it time and again in the athletic world. And it's most of the time, it looks like a tragedy when it happens, but it always seems to come out for the better. So definitely pay attention to that. And even if you're somebody, the one point I want to make is even if you're somebody who works out all the time, you're like, "Oh, I work out, I do this," and but, like, I have a client who works out all the time, who's worked out her entire life, and she asked me to program for her. I was thrilled about it because I know how active she is, and I'm like, "This is the test right here." Like,
Mhm.
this person works out all the time, does our strategy of putting them through an evaluation and targeting specific areas because I've worked on her for probably 2, 3 years now and know everything there is to know about what her body's been through and all that stuff. And so I was really excited for this opportunity. And then she told me what she was struggling with in the arena and things like that. And I made a post about it on Instagram. And in 5 weeks, her swing was stronger. She was able to leave the box with her horse better. And I'm telling you, she works out all the time. But
Mhm.
we took it and we made it more focused on just a few little things, a few little tweaks here and there, and added some stuff in that maybe was lacking. And now she is like just killing,
Right.
and she feels way different
Mhm.
when she's roping. And when she started the program, like she didn't even pick up I mean, she roped the dummy, but she didn't rope a single calf from the time that she started to the 5 week mark. Like that was zero arena time. And she had
Amazing.
that much improvement just by fixing her body. So I was just honestly, I was thrilled for her. I mean, obviously, it is not about us at all, but I love seeing people have those types of results, and it just makes me really excited that we can help people in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and just because you do work like you said, just because she worked out all the time didn't mean she necessarily addressed the areas that she had deficits in. We get stuck in old habits of how we work out, things that we like to do, things that we don't like to do. And so yeah, having somebody take a good look at you, evaluate your movement, evaluate your strength because there's could very well be some areas that are still lacking or deficits or just things that can be tweaked that are a little bit more sport specific for you that just having a outside objective look can really help take you to the next step, next level.
Yeah, and even like we talked about horses having old injuries, but if you have old injuries and you're trying to stay healthy throughout the competition year, I mean, that is the number one passion of mine is injury prevention and performance. So let us help you. We would love to have the opportunity to work with you on those things and keep you healthy and performing at your top level all year.
Amen.
All right. What else do you have, Becky? Anything else on cold weather and preconditioning and start of the year and all that stuff?
I think that's all I have. I think we've covered a lot and hopefully we'll get this out in time for everybody that's miserable in the cold.
Yeah, good time to catch up on your pivot point of view podcasting
That's
is when you are stuck inside and have nothing better to do.
that's right.
So thank you all for listening. We really appreciate your support. Like and subscribe if you like what you heard. Help us reach more people. And as always, let your health be the pivot point to your success.